Welcome, friends, to Camp Cinema. Tonight, we are going to talk the top 5 underrated horror films in my collection. I believe that all horror fans should get a taste of these movies. Good, bad, ugly, whatever you want to call them. They fell through the cracks, and tonight we are going to talk about them. Let's just go ahead and dive right into it with number 5. Ed Gein. This movie came out in 2000. This is starring the incredible Steve Railsback as Ed Gein. Most horror fans are going to know the story of Ed Gein, and they are also going to know the influences that came from Ed Gein. Of course, Leatherface, and then obviously also one of your biggest horror icons and one of the most famous in cinema history, Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs. Both those characters were directly written from Ed Gein. And this is one of those movies that I feel that maybe it fell through the cracks and didn't get enough attention because of the subject matter. And it also could be possibly because it is a slow burn. And sometimes we as horror fans crave that fast-paced. We want action and gore and all that stuff that comes with it. This movie is a slow burn. This is a real dive into the psyche of Ed Gein and who he was as a man and how it all took place and where he finally broke and, becomes the monster that we all know. Steve Railsback is phenomenal in this film. I truly believe that if it would have gotten more buzz and maybe even a little bit more of a theatrical release, I don't even believe this went into theaters. I believe this was a straight to VHS/DVD. Which is a shame because it really is well directed. As I said, incredibly acted. Steve Railsback really nails this role. Not a lot of gore. As I said, slow moving movie, but if you really want to dive into the psyche of Ed Gein and see, as I said, how it all began, this is the movie to watch. This is my number 5 most underrated horror film. We're going to keep it moving. We're going to pop on to number 4. Now, number 4 is a film from my childhood that I absolutely loved. I'm surprised that it didn't do better, especially because of who its director is. But that film, 976 Evil, directed by Freddy Krueger himself. That is right. This is the directorial debut of Robert Englund. This is one of those movies that, and most horror fans, I guess, have seen the In Search of Darkness series. And if you haven't, you must. In Search of Darkness 2, I believe, they do a fantastic interview with Robert Englund. And he talks about the hardships of this movie and it being how he actually was quite disgusted with the whole process of it and realizing that as a director, you really don't get your way once the camera starts, the clock starts ticking, and it really is just pressure. And he said that a lot of this movie, for him, did not get translated on film as he wanted to. He says that there are definitely certain sequences that are very much him, 100% him, but a lot of it due to time, budget cuts, all of that didn't quite get the film that he wanted to. But that doesn't change the fact that I absolutely love it. This movie, and I remember my friends would give me a lot of shit for watching this. They really thought it was a world-class turd, but I didn't care. I enjoyed it, and I still do. This movie stars Stephen Geoffreys, probably most famous for his role in Fright Night as Evil Ed. He is kind of a geeky, wimpy kid that gets picked on by all the stoner skaters and, less desirables of high school. And he comes across, his cousin is, a tough guy, rides a Harley, protects him as much as he can and stuff. But, Stephen Jeffers' character's name is Hoax. He is being raised by his mother, who is a devout Christian. And you can't even look at National Geographics in this household because they are pornographic. Well, he stumbles upon a phone number that his cousin had, and it was one of those, like how big in the 80s were these 1-800 numbers you call for your horoscope. Well, this just happened to be 976 Evil, and you call for your horoscope. And what basically happens is that it gives you some advice. If you follow this advice, you start to become more powerful. And what that does is it actually possesses poor Hoax and turns him into a demon. And chaos ensues. This has a spectacular guest starring moment by Robert Picardo, who a lot of us know and love from The Howling. He was Eddie Quist. And also, for some of you sci-fi lovers, he was also the holographic doctor on Star Trek Voyager. He plays the devil who runs the 976 Evil telephone company, and he just does an absolutely spectacular little small role in this movie. But yes, my friends, if you are looking for some pure 80s cheese and you want to have a smile and you want to support Robert Englund's directorial debut, 976 Evil is definitely one to watch, and that is why it is number 4 on my most underrated horror films. Moving to number 3. And this was one of those toss-ups of where I didn't really know where to put it in the list. If it was going to be top 3, if it was actually going to move into the number 2 slot. It was one of those, it was very borderline. It was very, very borderline between 2 and 3. And more or less borderline just because of what this movie means to me and my actual just absolute love of this film. But overall, due to the quality of the film, it did have to take a backseat and move to number 3. And this wonderful gem is known as 1986's Trick or Treat. Not to be confused with the little sack man that eats lollipops anthology Trick or Treat. No. 1986 Trick or Treat takes you on a journey of the love of heavy metal and worshiping your heavy metal idols to a terribly wrong degree. This movie stars, get ready for it, Mark Price. Mark Price is best known for his role as Skippy on Family Ties, starring the fantastic Michael J. Fox, and of course, Tremors alum Michael Gross. So yes, Skippy plays an absolute 1980s, as we would refer to ourselves, Hessian. Heavy metal lover. Doesn't do that great with the ladies. Definitely gets his ass kicked by the jocks all the time. And his favorite artist is known as Sammi Curr. Sammi Curr is actually from his hometown and was denied the opportunity to play the Halloween homecoming at his old high school, in which now Skippy, Edward Weinbauer in the movie, now goes to this high school. And it's funny that these are supposed to be high school kids, like all these actors are in their 30s. But anyways, you're supposed to suspend reality and go with it. So anyways, the plot thickens as Sammi Curr dies in a hotel fire. This absolutely destroys Eddie Weinbauer, who goes and seeks solace with his great friend, the DJ Nuke, aka Gene Simmons. And it's hilarious to me that Gene Simmons and Ozzy Osbourne are on the cover of this movie, considering collectively they're in it for about 60 seconds. But Gene Simmons does a great job as the radio DJ. He's paying homage to one of his heroes, Wolfman Jack, and he's really putting that out there, and you actually really feel it. So hats off Gene Simmons. Gene Simmons seems to have come across the one and only copy of Sammy Kerr's last album that hasn't been released, called Songs in the Key of Death. He is supposed to play this on Halloween night and debut it. He gives the one and only copy of this album to superfan Eddie Weinbauer, because he has it he taped it off the vinyl to play on the air that night. So Eddie Weinbauer now has the one and only surviving album, last of the Sammy Kerr legacy. And it is noted by Nuke that the album is heavy because the spirit of Sammy Kerr lives through it. Well, that actually turns out to be true, and Edward Weinbauer, in his disgust of life and dealing with all these abusive jocks at his high school, somehow decides to play his record backwards, and Sammy Kerr speaks to him and tells him how to handle these bullies. I'm not going to give the entire movie away because I could seriously talk about Trick or Treat all night long, and maybe should have done this as a standalone video for Camp Cinema, and we still might. But we're going to cut to the chase, in which, after enough playing it backwards, he does resurrect his hero, Sammy Kerr, and chaos follows. Now, all music in this movie is done by the fantastic band known as Fastway. Fastway was founded by Eddie Fastway Clarke, known of Motorhead fame. He played on the first 3 phenomenal Motorhead albums. And yes, yours truly, of course, owns the vinyl soundtrack for Trick or Treat. Of course I do. You know I do. So anywho, this is an absolute must-watch for horror fans out there and heavy metal fans. You will absolutely love this movie. It did land as my number 3 on my most underrated horror movie list. Moving on to number 4, and a sip of an adult beverage. Number 2 on my list of number 5 most underrated horror films. This movie is a colossal turd, but it is a near and dear colossal turd to me, and I do believe that as horror fans, if you are just looking for a good time and you want to watch something different, when I say different, I mean a different version of about 10 other movies you have seen, including Aliens and every buddy cop movie you have ever seen, then look no further. Split Second, starring Rutger Hauer, is for you. This is going to be set in, this movie came out actually in 1992, and it is set in the far off future of 2020, where London is underwater, not like fully submerged, but the water table has risen enough to where it's basically under about 3 feet of water. So life is not very pleasant there on that side of the pond, if you will. Rutger Hauer is Detective Harley Stone. Yes, you heard that correct. Harley Stone. Does not get much more macho machismo than that. And he is investigating murders, a serial killer is out there who is ripping the hearts out of random victims in a very inhuman way. And it turns out that he has a psychic connection with this killer. And you have to understand the character of Harley Stone. He lives off anxiety, stress, chocolate, and coffee, and chain smokes endlessly. So he is the fantastic picture of health. He teams up, and this is where your buddy cop movie comes in, with a completely nerdy Harvard psychology major graduate. And hilarity ensues on your buddy cop film as hearts are being torn out of chests. Actually, you know, the graphic effects in this are not bad. The acting is atrocious, but that's okay. When your character's name is Harley Stone, you're not asking for much. Kim Cattrall stars in this movie as well as the love interest, and she, while filming this, was just coming off filming Star Trek 3, in which she plays, were they Klingon, Romulan? I don't remember. Leave it in the comments, let me know. But she has the haircut of a Klingon or Romulan in Split Second, and it is unbelievably bad. And it will really bring a smile to your face. But if you were also a fan who wants to see Kim Cattrall naked with Romulan hair, Split Second gives you that pleasure. This was actually a really nice release here. This was released by MVD Visual. And it does have a 2K scan. It's got a bunch of behind the scenes and making of and features on this, and you can actually still find this Blu-ray out there. I believe it is on Amazon, and it is quite affordable. And if you are in the mood for horror meets sci-fi meets buddy cop movie, Split Second is for you, and that is why it has made number 2 on my top 5 list. Now, we have reached the creme de la creme, if you will. And this will be interesting, too, to see if in the comments what people think about this. To see if people agree with my assessment that this is an underrated horror film, or if you believe that this is a very well-known horror film and that I am just talking out of my ass. But to me, I don't know a whole lot of people who know this movie. And when I say underrated, what I mean by that is you can pretty much walk up to anyone who watches movies and say Friday the 13th, and they know it. Nightmare on Elm Street, they know it. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, yada, yada, yada. But you cannot walk up to everyone and say Night of the Creeps, and everyone knows this film. I absolutely love this film. Not only is this number 1 on my top 5 list, this is in my top 5 list of horror movies, period. I love everything about Night of the Creeps. It is directed by Fred Decker, who's probably most famous for the Monster Squad, but it is truly directed, very artistic. The shots are great, and it's starring Tom Atkins. You cannot ask for more. Starring Tom Atkins as pretty much drunken Detective Ray Cameron. He likes beer, he likes whiskey, he likes to chain smoke cigarettes, and whenever you start a conversation with him, he starts it off with "Thrill me." That is his tagline. It has even made the back of the Blu-ray. Your other star in this movie, maybe a little bit lesser known, if you will, and not quite up to the acting chops per se. Jason Lively of Russ fame from European Vacation is your other main star in this movie. And it also kind of becomes a cop buddy movie, the relationship between Jason Lively and Tom Atkins, you know, really kind of goes those places. But this is just a spectacular and fun horror film, and it really gave some great special effects artists their start. A lot of young guys. Kevin Berger worked on this, Kevin Yeager. You're talking guys from K&B in their youth working on this film. And the effects are spectacular. The zombie makeup is great. The slugs are very cool and interesting. There's really good comedy in this movie, as well as really good horror in this movie. And as I said, it's truly well directed. Fred Dekker is no slouch as a director. His visual way of telling the story is fantastic. And I'm not going to give up a lot of the plot on this. Other than, space slugs that turn you into zombies, and Detective Ray Cameron, aka Tom Atkins, has to take them on. This is my number one top underrated horror film that I truly can say all horror fans should watch and give a chance, because you will absolutely love this film. That, my friends, concludes my very first Camp Cinema full-length video. For all of you that stuck around this long and followed me on this video, I really do truly appreciate it. This is 100% a passion project for me. This is not about Patreon. This is not about I want to quit my day job and be a full-time YouTuber. I just want to come on this channel and talk about fantastic horror films and maybe some not so fantastic horror films. And also, there's going to be a dash and a sprinkling of some heavy metal music in here, because heavy metal and horror films go together. And they are a huge passion of mine, and they have been since I was a child. And now as a gray-haired, or as I like to call it, wisdom highlights adult, I am still incredibly passionate about horror films and heavy metal music, and that is what this channel is going to be all about. And if that is what you are into and you dig that kind of stuff, I would love it if you stick around and watch some more of Camp Cinema. But for right now, my friends, go enjoy yourself. Go watch your favorite horror film, and maybe it'll inspire you to make a top 5 list of what you think are underrated horror films. And I would love to hear from you about that. Go ahead and post them down in the comments. And I say that like I'm going to have all these viewers and load up the comment. 3 people may watch this video, and I'm okay with that, because if I entertained the 3 people who watched it, I have done my job. So here's to you, my friends. Enjoy an adult beverage and a great horror film. Thank you so much for checking out Camp Cinema.